How are you, Chris?
Good morning. Hi and welcome to today's vlog. So today's vlog, the first of 2022, and I'm going to be giving a public speaking event up in Athlone IT. So I got asked to do this 2 years ago as well. Get very nervous before it, but I do enjoy doing it, and especially when I get to talk about the topics that I know pretty well, that the ones that I talk about all the time. These are the 4 books that I'm gonna pick from. I have read 3 of them, and Ray Dalio's Principles I haven't read, but I've listened to an awful lot of his stuff online, podcast interviews, YouTube videos, things like that. I take one, not even chapter, one tiny little topic from each of them that I've used or that I talk about quite a bit, and then I write down a good few notes on each of them, which takes about an hour and a half. And I'll usually be thinking about this stuff and talking about it to clients and to footballers, etc. for a long time, and then from there I'll just write very, very minimal notes or minimal slides on a PowerPoint and start spieling off from there, so I'll see where the speech takes me. But I'm definitely not over prepared with any of this stuff. I'll write some notes very similar to what I do when I'm doing a 10-minute talk to a GA team, which I do like 3-4 times a week for the last 10 years. So I talk to them for 5-10 minutes at a time usually, sometimes longer, but usually 5 to 10 minutes. And I'll just do notes like this, except a lot shorter when it's only a 10-minute talk. Out of gym clothes for the day, a rarity for me at this time of year. Happy enough to do it whenever I get the chance.
Alright, how are you, Garvey?
Oh, yeah.
You get up for a while every day, you do?
I drove over a stick.
Today is one of the guest lecturers in the self-management and teamwork. So before I introduce your guest lecturer today, and sort of maybe just set the context as to why we do this. So there's 2 things. There's the importance of teamwork, and then why do we look at sports and sports coaching. One of the things is that the focus on teamwork in this program, it's really one of the things that differentiates it. And we believe anyway, it's one of the reasons that the course is successful, and that the graduates do so well when they go into arts, and that they integrate into teams so well when they get there. But software engineering is a team. It's a team exercise, it's a team sport. It's no longer about just one person sitting on their own with their laptop or with their computer or whatever. And it's most successful when you work as a team. So diverse teams of people working together, and that's why we put so much emphasis on teamwork. So without further ado, I go on and introduce Kevin. So I'll have to summarise Kevin in one slide or in a few words. So Kevin is from 100% personal training. He owns his own gym, very, very successful. He works as a personal trainer. He also works as a GA coach and manager. He has competed internationally in bodybuilding competitions, and here he's Lagos. I got to know him when he wanted to video all our club games so that he could look back over the games and see how people could improve. He has 11 years of coaching experience both in the gym as a personal trainer and working with GA teams. So that's an example of his gym there, and I think here you can see in the background the before and after wall where you're looking at clients, their improvements over time. So he was successful just at the end of last year.
Good memories there.
It was good for us as well. And the other thing that he does, and this is coaching the underage, and he does phenomenal work with the underage players, absolutely phenomenal work, and probably more than he actually realises even himself. So without further ado,
And if you can navigate your situations where you're working in teams and when you're working with people a little bit differently, it can have an enormous effect. The title of the talk is Progress Through Struggle. Struggle is often seen as a negative word, and it's often seen as something to be avoided. But I think the exact opposite. I think voluntary struggle is exactly what most people need, and it's essential for every single human being throughout their lives, putting themselves through hardship, through struggle, with the intent of getting to somewhere that's a higher ground
And if you can get a group of individuals voluntarily struggling together, working together as a team, it's amazing what you can achieve. If these slides seem non-linked or whatever, it's kind of my style. I try and bring things from many different walks and relate them back to sport. So the first is a quote, a favorite quote of mine is, "A nation is born stoic and dies Epicurean." So what is a stoic and what is an Epicurean? If a nation is born stoic, and there are countless examples William Durant mentions, from Babylonians to the Romans, the Greeks, all nations and all great civilizations are born stoic, with people who are willing to work and work and work and work in teams to build cities, to build empires, even though they don't get much pleasure in the short term. And all great empires and all great nations fall when people start trying to take as much as possible for themselves. Powerful nation in the world today, America, they seem to be falling under the Epicurean philosophy far more than the Stoic, which they were all built on, which the country was built on. This brings me to time preference. So time preference is a very, very simple concept. And I think any of the slides that I mentioned today, they are all quite simple concepts that you all have come across before numerous times in your life. They should stick a chord with you. It might be the first time you hear these phrases, but it's definitely not the first time you've lived through any of these experiences. So with time preference, it's what essentially allows human beings and civilizations to cooperate, prosper, and live in peace. If they have a low time preference, they value the future more than the present. If they have a high time preference, they're always thinking about the here and now. So one of the best ways I've ever heard this explained was through an example about fishing. So if you have two people fishing, let's call them John and Kevin. So let's say they both spend 8 hours a day fishing. And that's what gets them through the day, because that's what they eat, and they need to eat to stay alive. At some stage, John decides he's not going to fish for 8 hours, he's going to fish for 4. And in the other 4, even though he might eat less in the short term, he's going to make a fishing rod. And through his 2 weeks eating less, he makes a fishing rod, but now he can catch 8 hours worth of catch in just 4 hours. And with those extra 4 hours, because he has a low time preference, he's able to build fishing rods, nets, boats. So not only do he catch more in the daily, he's constantly able to go out further into the sea, where there's less competition. He's constantly able to produce more and more and more. Whether Kevin, more primitively, is just constantly satisfying his daily, what he needs right here and right now. Which of those two people do you want to work with? Which of those type of people is going to offer you more opportunities to develop in the future? And which of those type of people is going to employ you to help build their business? So over thousands of years, we could say that the descendants of the people with the low time preferences are the people who built businesses, built civilizations, until eventually you end up with some of the fishing boats nowadays which are built between 10 and 20 years. So no fish caught for 10 to 20 years, millions and sometimes billions of investment before a single fish is caught, and thousands of people get to eat, get to earn a living, and get to develop. Communities get to develop because of that low time preference. What separates humans from animals is that time preference. And the more primitive an animal is, they're constantly reacting to short-term impulses and seeking pleasure. If there's food, they want it now straight away. If there's food, they want it now straight away. What separates humans is we can delay food for the here and now. And we can build things that help our communities strive into the future and become more and more productive, so that everyone gets to prosper. And not just the people that we're working with right now get to prosper. Many of the people who haven't even been born yet So a lot of the monuments of the past, a lot of the buildings of the past, took 300 and 400 years to build. By the completion rate was 4 or 5 lifetimes. So a lot of people starting off building these things, maybe like the Colosseum in Rome, or if you've been to any European beautiful cities, a lot of the people who started building them never got to see them completed, but they knew it was going to build a healthier civilization for the future, and hence Western civilization developed. With that comes the marshmallow test. So I'm sure many of you have heard, or most of you have heard of the Stanford marshmallow test. So basically they did a very, very simple experiment to demonstrate time preference. So they gave a marshmallow and left it on the table to a child. And they said, if in 15 minutes when I come back, if that marshmallow is still there, you'll have 2 marshmallows. I'll give you a second one. But if you eat the marshmallow by the time I get back, you only get to have that one. So a very, very simple way of demonstrating time preference. And when they followed up the experiments into adulthood, the kids who had passed the marshmallow test had far lower risk of addiction to drugs or alcohol, lower body mass index, so lower body fat, and overall general better well-being and more wealth. So your ability to delay gratification in the here and now, you don't get to choose whether it affects you or not. It's already affecting you right here and right now. And ye in front of me are a massive example of that. You're deferring jobs that could earn you far more money right here, right now, today, because you're investing in yourself, investing in your education, so that you can become smarter and earn more money in the long term. But becoming more conscious of it and developing more awareness around it will help you have more control over it. Okay? Because we've all had instances where we've sought pleasure and instant gratification, looked for a bit more credit than we deserved, had a bit too much food, had a bit too much of a good time, and ended up feeling a little bit guilty of it and paid the price for it later on. So it's not something that some people are born with and some people aren't. Like everything, it comes more natural to some than others, but everyone can improve on it. Pain plus reflection equals progress. This is a quote from Ray Dalio, a manager of the biggest hedge fund in the world. So, pain and suffering, like we said, people think they're things to be avoided, but they're actually things to be embraced. But they're only to be embraced if you can attach meaning to them and learn from them. So what are the types of pain and suffering that it's essential to go through? And again, we don't really have a choice, but most of them, we have to go through them, whether we like it or not. So the physical aspects of pain and suffering: hunger, cold, discomfort, so maybe sleeping rough or sleeping on a rough bed like a soldier, and physical, tough physical pain. Okay, I got a lot of new clients in January, and about 10 of them got sick inside the first week due to the gym. Okay, why would you bother doing that to yourself? Why would you go and, when you can be sitting down on the couch, eating something far more comfortable in a warm environment than in a cold gym, puking into the toilet? That's voluntary suffering. But what's even harder to reflect from, that's voluntary. That does build your mindset, build your character, makes all sports teams far tougher when they go through that tough physical suffering. But even harder to grow through and even harder to embrace is the mental suffering. Okay? Embarrassment, anxiety, shame, insecurity, all the stuff that we know about, we try and reject feeling or we try to stay away from. So maybe that shame or that embarrassment comes from a poor performance on the sports field. That can be a bitter pill, but life can be far more bitter pills than that. Maybe it's a failed marriage or a failed relationship. Maybe it's bankruptcy or losing your job. And the shame from the group, or what does everyone think about me, is very, very difficult to handle. But it's an essential part of making progress. Pain without reflection. If you don't reflect on it, if you don't look inside the pain, if you don't look inside your own personal failures that we all have, and find find the meaning inside them, then it's pointless and it's suffering for the sake of suffering, and it's not going to make you stronger at all. In fact, it's going to make you a lot weaker. Okay, so pain without reflection is the blame game. I am suffering because of them. So self-pity, resentment, you have to work way, way harder and someone else works less hard than you and they got more success. That type of resentful mindset, that's a spiral that's so easy to fall into. Jealousy, anger, bitterness, that's pain without reflection. And it's really, really difficult not to go down that road. And it's so easy to fall into any of those habits or any of those mindsets. But with reflection, if you can think about it as solving the puzzle, every bit of pain, every bit of suffering that you go through, whether it's mental or physical, is giving you a puzzle to solve. And if you can look at it honestly and solve that puzzle, you have massive progress. Massive progress. And I've seen this and experienced this so many times. And the bitterest pills are often the ones that allow you to progress the most. Okay? So maybe academically it's failing an exam. But me, with Gary Moore, my first year as manager, we went to the county quarter final and we lost by over 20 points. Got hammered out the gate. So one of the biggest losses, I'm pretty sure it was the biggest loss they ever had in memory. Definitely in a quarter-final stage. But it gave us so many clues on where to improve. So many clues. So players not being dedicated enough, players not being fit enough, me not being a good enough coach tactically, good enough coach getting them to be fit enough, not doing enough video analysis or stats, not having my homework done enough. It gave us so many clues on where to get better. And the very next year was actually our best season. So 10 games into this next season, we lost 10 or 12 players. We'd only won one or two of those first 10 games of the season, including another hammer or two along the way. But all of a sudden, it just clicked. After working and doing all that physical suffering and tough training, and constantly looking back into the bit of shame or the bit of embarrassment from the tough losses, working on those and taking the clues, huge progress came. The second half of that season, we got to the county semi-final, lost after a replay, and we won 8 out of 10 games. The only 2 games we lost there were against Castlebar and Ballintubber, who were the kingpins at the time. At any juncture throughout that year, it would have been so easy to just play the blame game. And not just me, all of the players, all of the club, everyone else could just play the blame game at any stage. Said, do you know what, if this, I'm not proud for this, he's not doing this, he's not doing that, he's playing bad, he's not listening to what he's being told, the manager doesn't have a clue, the coach doesn't have a clue. It's so easy. What's difficult is taking responsibility, taking ownership. The very similar situation happened with the second team I was coaching there in Wales. We lost a quarter-final again, something about quarter-finals and the lessons in them. We lost to our bitter rivals. So the biggest derby they have, in a quarter-final, 1 point up, with 10 minutes to go, ended up getting a player sent off and losing by 4 or 5. But there was so much progress in the hurt, in the pain. You know, people talk about motivation a lot. There's so much motivation in a little bit of suffering. The motivation won't come from the comfort. Okay? And if you can learn that lesson and see things that way, it's a real gem for you. It's a massive gem for you moving forward. You will never get motivation when you're comfortable. Okay? You get the opposite. You get soft. But when you look inside the pain and the suffering, there's so much motivation in it. And we managed last year to play 11 or 12 games between league and championship. We lost one by 1 point to Ben Walsh. So maybe the stats man, a crucial part of any management team at this stage, maybe the stats man is bombarding the players with information. And information overload is a terrible thing. And he's just confusing them. He's talking about too many things at once. How is that my fault? Well, it's completely my fault, because I didn't say to him that, look, we're going 80-20 on this, we're focusing on 2 or 3 things, and that's all. Don't say any more, or you're going to overload them, confuse them, and paralysis by analysis. So that's peer-to-peer, up the chain of the command. And this is dealing with your boss, something you all have to do. You all have to deal with people that are in charge of you. And this is where it gets very simple to play the blame game. He's ahead of me, Joe. He's made a mistake. What an idiot. Okay, I'm below him. He has to take responsibility for everything. But you don't get away with that easily, not if you're ambitious and you want to progress. So maybe for me, that's the manager of the team or the chairman of the club. Maybe they're not supporting what I'm trying to achieve as much. Maybe it's equipment, maybe it's not giving us access to video analysis, maybe it's funding, things like that. How is that my fault? Maybe I didn't spell it out for him clearly in black and white exactly why I need the different parts of the jigsaw to put the puzzle together so that the team and the organisation has everything that it needs to make progress. It's my communication error that forces the boss to make a bad decision. So that's extreme ownership. You're taking responsibility for the people above you as well as the people on the same line here. And for the coach, when there's people below you, the players, below you in the chain of command, not below you as human beings, but below you in the chain of command, you're completely responsible for everything that goes wrong when they don't follow your instructions. So a thing I have when I'm coaching people, whether it's in the gym or whether it's on the football field, is I explain it to them visually, so something like this, maybe a video. I explain to them orally, so I make sure that they hear me talk it out, that they comprehend it that way. And then we walk through exactly in slow motion what we want to do on the field, whether that's for a kick-out strategy, for a defensive play, for an attacking play. And if ever it doesn't go according to plan, which when you're managing a G18, nothing ever goes fully according to plan, you have to go back to the drawing board and constantly look at how do I explain this better, how do I explain this better, how do I coach this better. So if we either are going into the working world, into the business world, and you're working as teams, it's crucial that you constantly work on your communication skills and take as much responsibility as you can for making sure that everyone knows what your goal is, why you have that goal, and what you need to achieve that. And that clarity will bring confidence. The clearer people are, the more confident they'll be. The more they believe in you, the more they believe in the business, the more they believe in the project, and the more chance you have of success. But the confusion, blame game, taking everything out on everyone else, not taking ownership, not taking responsibility, will do the exact opposite. Okay? And Wade, you might think that that's not my fault. He's the boss, he owns the business, he's ahead of me. It is completely your responsibility, because if the business fails, everyone fails. There's no winners when the business fails. There's no winners if the team fails. The last part on extreme ownership is it's extremely humbling and extremely counterintuitive, because you're constantly beating yourself. I did this wrong, how do I do this better? I did this wrong, how do I do this better? You're constantly pointing out your own flaws. So if you're insecure, if you can't take constructive criticism, you're going to find it very, very hard to do. Very, very difficult. And it's difficult no matter who you are. The last part is it's counterintuitive. You might say to yourself, if I keep taking the blame for this fella I'm working with, he's going to get stopped, he's going to, all he's going to do is constantly let me take the blame for him. That's exactly what you should do, is constantly take the blame from him. Because when you start taking more responsibility, it will get noticed. If you're in a functional hierarchy, it will get noticed. People will like that you take more responsibility, that you don't go hiding, that you have the mindset of able to take criticism, that doesn't go hiding when things go wrong. And you'll get rewarded justly for that. And if you're not getting rewarded justly for that, then it's time to look for a new job, because you're in a corrupt organization. But in my experience, organizations are far less corrupt than people make them out to be. Okay? That's just another excuse and another way of blaming others around you for when things go wrong. And the last part, it's not going to make people soft, because it's contagious. If you start taking responsibility, the players will start taking responsibility. If you start working hard, players will start working hard. If you start doing extra work, everyone else is going to want to do extra work as well. If you set the tone, you will make culture very, very different. The last bit of this. big favourite of mine, and it can be applied on absolutely everything. But to make it specific to today's context and to bring it back through the whole talk, to bring it all together, 20% of your tasks, when you go into the working world, 20% of your tasks will give you 80% of your results. Okay? And results is all that matters. When you're going into the market, all that matters is results. When you're over a football team, you know, all that matters is results. That's what you'll be measured on. Those 20% of tasks are usually the dirtiest tasks that everyone is going to avoid. So what they do when they see those 20% of tasks that are going to give them the most progress, they avoid them and they get very, very busy on stuff, the mundane stuff that doesn't actually make much difference. Okay? So no point being a busy fool. There's no point saying, okay, this is top priority, but you know what? Now is not the time for that difficult conversation. Now is not the time to do that task that's the most pressure to deliver because of a deadline, or the most pressure to deliver because it's a really important project for the company. Now is not the time to do the task that has the hardest amount of work in it, that you're not sure have you the skills to do. You know that if you do it, you're going to have to find out and maybe make mistakes along the way. Now is not the time to do the task that's the hardest work or the longest hours even. So to bring it back to the start, in my opinion, the Stoic versus Epicurean thing, 80% of your time should be spent being Stoic, you know, trying to get wiser, maybe reading books or talking to smart people, studying, doing what you're doing now, increasing your skills, improving your skills that you already have. 80% of time should be, you know, on temperance and moderation, making sure that you're not indulging yourself doing too much partying with your friends when you should be studying, too much food, you know. If you love food as much as me, it's very, very easy to go overboard, you know, and that's a choice you have to make every single day. Too much activities that drive everyone to look at you where you're seeking as much attention, short-term pleasure, short-term recognition for your work. But at the same time, life shouldn't be miserable. You shouldn't be a cow standing in the rain like what I was saying earlier on. You have to enjoy yourself at some stage. So I think 20% of the time, if 20% of the time you do go to a nice restaurant, reward yourself with a holiday or a new car, or the things that you love, whether that's clothes, whatever it is, the things that you love, spend 20% of your resources that you've worked very, very hard for on those things that make you happy, because they will end up making you a bit more creative, making you appreciate all your hard work, and making all the hard work and the delayed gratification worth it. And if you can do that, you will constantly be in the green, incrementally driving things forward, and year after year, you know, your stock will be rising, even though you still have time to enjoy yourself and you still have time to be rewarded for all your hard work. And that's, in my opinion, how any good business, how any good sports team, how any good society works, is people are constantly working as hard as they possibly can for a better future, for a better tomorrow. But don't forget to enjoy yourself while you're doing it, because that's what makes all hard work worthwhile. Okay, thanks.
I think we can say thanks very much to Kevin. Would you mind if I ask a few questions, Kevin?
Of course, yeah.
As we throw it up into the floor. Very inspiring.
What are some of your favourite books? I have a list I'll send them to Mary of my top 10. The ones I use for this talk specifically are Bitcoin Standards, so you might be interested in that. Time preference came from that. But I think that time preference thing was the first I had heard of it, but as soon as you hear it, you're like, of course, you know, it makes perfect sense. Bitcoin Standards, Principles by Ray Dalio, Tim Ferriss, 4-Hour Workweek. So you've heard of that. And the last one was Extreme Ownership, John William. There's the fourth with this talk specific.
After you achieved your goal the first year with the team, was it harder to motivate again the next year, or was it different?
That's a very good question. So that would bring me to the topic of the whole speech. So when you achieve a goal and you make improvements or you make progress, it's from stoic principles, you know, like really hard work, suffering. Everyone else, you know, say the best player gets praised. The first thing when you're in that mindset of making progress, the first thing you're going to do is say, "Oh look, it's all about the team. The team worked really hard. I was just lucky enough to do whatever, score the winning point or whatever it might be." When you win, it becomes far harder to sell that, you know, because people have tasted the external gratification of praise, and whether it comes from the media, whether it comes from the supporters telling them how great they are, and no matter whether it's just club or whether it's in the Premiership, you'll always have the media and fans blowing individuals' heads out of the mindset that got them the progress in the first place. So it is definitely very, very natural for some team or individual who's achieved success to let it go to his head and let the standards drop a bit. So I've experienced that, and I'm actually working my absolute hardest to make sure it doesn't happen this year. You know? But I think that's very human. I think we all, when we achieve something, you know, when you achieve your degree here, what's the first thing that's going to happen? You're going to celebrate it, you know. And you might go into celebration mode for a day, but you might go into it for a week or a month or even a year. And time flies by very, very quickly. So that's something we all have to balance. You know, you're entitled to a bit of celebration and a bit of recognition for your hard work. But what's too much is an impossible question to answer. You know?
I think you've got beat in bodybuilding for a long time.
I was just kind of interested in the mental challenge of it as much as I'm trying to achieve something better than I've ever done before, say with my physique. You know, I don't think bodybuilding is my first love. Just like, you know, I'm a small guy, so putting on a bit of muscle was always a motivation, but trying to get as big as possible wasn't. So I'm actually looking to do something more, take goggles like this year and maybe try an ultra run, maybe 150 or 60 miles, just as a completely different challenge. So it's more the idea of putting yourself through suffering and pain to see what that gives you mentally, rather than I want to be a bodybuilder, I want to be an ultra runner. I don't think I have the genetics to be world class at any physical endeavour to become an Olympian or a sports star or anything, but I still love the physical challenge.
Look at the ego on teamwork.
I've done a load of reading on the ego. Did you ever hear of Gabor Mate? Like an addiction and trauma specialist. So he talks about the ego a lot. Then there's the ego in Stoicism, which they talk about an awful lot as well. So, like, trying to give it a clear definition, I'm not confident in at all. You know, but I think my definition would just be someone who's trying to get too much external gratification, and when that external reward or external criticism affects them too much, then you say they have an ego problem. Or they think that they're working in a team, and it's unbelievably short-sighted to think that if you put yourself to the front and try to take most of the praise, that people around you won't get resentful, they will, which will only hurt you in the long term. So I think that's where I try and manage ego the most. Make sure no one tries to get too much praise, and make sure no one's affected too much by praise or criticism. Put your hands up if you've ever worked with someone or had issues with someone who has too big an ego. Yeah. Pretty much everyone. Pretty much everyone. So it's probably something that's worth spending a bit of time to understand. And it won't be the last time.
I suppose, like, similarly, then, like, if people seeking like external gratification stuff, you don't think that's the best approach. Like, on the other side, then, so do you think like punishments do anything, or are they just toxic and bad? I know it's a loaded word, like, but you know what I mean, is in like negative feedback and things like that.
I would be far bigger fan of accountability than punishment. But I have a client, and he owns his own business, and you find this one for him. So he has his own business. There's 10 or 15 people working for him. So I was telling him that you know, let's say, we say Johnny again, he wasn't doing his job in the match. And he comes to training the next day, and I can get the video, and I can get him in front of everyone and say, what is going on here? And he's nearly, you know, a bit shamed and a bit embarrassed, but he wasn't doing his job, or he was trying to be greedy with the ball or whatever. And I can really go hard on him in that environment. Okay? You can't do that in a lot of businesses. That's bullying. You know, I don't think anyone in a sports organization would call that bullying. That's just the way they work. And if you read about David Goggins or Jocko Willink in the Navy SEALs, it's 10 times more severe than that. So that kind of like punishment or whatever, I've used the accountability, and you have to take responsibility for not doing your job and letting the team down. I would do that quite regularly, and would never try and like humiliate or, you know, I would be very against trying to, I'm going to put this fellow in his box type thing, which was done to me when I was there. Stuff is great, but if you do that all the time, you know, you're probably battling demons that type of physical suffering isn't going to help past the point. What's going to help at that stage is actually the exact opposite, being soft on yourself, and, you know, not being so hard on your own mistakes, beating yourself up so much. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's just funny because like there's people take completely different approaches. I know it's January, so people go down one that and try to do both, but I mean,
Yeah.
different personality. Something might fight, something might.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Some people quiet their mind by going on 20-mile runs. So some people, that is relaxation.
Yeah.
Some people, that is the exact opposite of relaxation. You know, so it does depend on your own temperament and personality. We're usually poor judges of which we are and what we need. You know, need worse than anyone.
I think we can safely say we all enjoyed that. And I can speak for myself when I say you must have wrote it for me, because I loved it. And on behalf of the class, I'd like to ask Kevin and Annette to give a small tour of appreciation to Kevin. So if we clap for our golden girl.
Just finished now. Bit of a sigh of relief. Public speaking in any form is nerve-wracking. You know, it's nerve-wracking beforehand and you're a bit drained afterwards, but I still love it at the same time. I suppose like any type of performance, you're just trying to get over some sort of initial nerves or butterflies, and once you get into it, actually enjoy what you're doing. And I enjoy what I'm talking about because it's the stuff that I talk about every day to my clients, to football teams, to everyone. So I hope you took something out of it too, and I hope it was congruent in the end. Just on the way home from my talk, so always a bit surreal after an experience like that, especially as I don't consider myself particularly intellectual or anything, as I said in the talk, because I always struggled in school with languages and maths, and I suppose I associated them with being intelligent, even though obviously there's more types of intelligence than just those two things. But I'm extremely grateful for the opportunity from Mary. Mary's been a big supporter of mine and such a massive help to everything I did in Garrymore and all the different parts of the project in Garrymore, and I'm glad I was able to kind of repay that in a way by doing these talks in Athlone IT the 2 days. And a lot of the inspiration for the videos I'm currently doing on the YouTube channel and putting clips of them up on Instagram comes from that first talk I did in AIT. When I did that talk, numerous people said to me I should really do far more public speaking. Public speaking at this day and age is so much just putting your stuff online, putting up as much of your best information as you possibly can online. So for me, that's from, you know, the books and the coaching concepts and everything that I go through there, and then how I train people and coach people in the gym. But when people who you respect and you care about and who believe in you tell you something, or tell you should try something, or you should do something, I think you owe it to them and to yourself to try and actually make something of it. So that's what I'm trying to do with these videos. Numerous people who
I really respect have told me that, you know, I have something to say and I have value in what I'm talking about. You know, even if that audience is only 5 or 10 people, they do have an audience, and I'm trying to speak to them and say things to them that they'll find valuable, that they can use and apply and help to make progress in any way that they can. So again, if you found the talk helpful, I'm glad. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch the video. And Joe, if you have ever any questions on any of the topics, books, personal training advice or physical training advice that I talk about, don't hesitate to get in touch. Thanks for watching. Talk to you again soon.